Jesse Wells is often compared to Bob Dylan. When it dropped, I knew I was going to review Jesse's album. I'm a fan. I like him. I like the videos where he's playing his guitar in a field. I love the live album that he did for Devil's Den, and I know I'm going to love the live album that he's done for this one. I haven't actually watched that yet, but I have listened to Masks Off about 6 times while I've been doing this review. If you've already heard the album Masks Off, pause the video now, drop me a comment with your thoughts, because I don't want to go influencing your opinions, but I'd love to read what you thought of the album. To make a fair comparison to Bob Dylan, I listened to his greatest hits, essentially. It's called the Essential Bob Dylan Revised Edition, and there were some good songs, there were some bad songs. But overall, I have some thoughts that we can kind of start with. I thought the harmonica was a little bit too much, not just in terms of how much it appeared, but also like the sound of it was really, really harsh and a bit grating. I don't think it's aged particularly well, but also it's of its time. The production was a little bit dated and some of the lyrics felt a little sexist. I've definitely heard worse, but I've also definitely heard better. I'll dive into it a little bit more later, but the Essential Bob Dylan scored 7.5 on emotion, 7.6 on music and songwriting, and 7.7 on production and technique. And that gives it an overall score of 7.6. which you probably could have figured out. In this video, I'm going to dive deep into those areas, particularly for Masks Off, but I will compare and highlight differences between Jesse Wells and Bob Dylan. And I will explain why I genuinely think Jesse Wells is the better of the two artists. I'll share my overall rating at the end, and then at the very end of the video, I'll share some recommendations for albums that you might enjoy this week. On the emotion front of things, which for me covers vibe and performance, there were definitely overall stronger performances from Wells. He's not a world-class singer, but he really nails the tone that he's trying to deliver. He does it really well. He sings well. I like the way his voice sounds. I don't really know other ways to put that. The vibes for the songs were generally pretty strong on both of the records that I listened to. I've got some standouts for Jesse Wells on the emotion side of things. Starting off, This and Not Some Other Way. It closes out the album with some very strong vocals and a melancholic vibe that's really nailed. We've also got The Ballad of Big Balls, which is an exceptionally named track, if nothing else. It's track 2 on Masks Off. It's got an excellent bluesy vibe and a strong performance. It's not necessarily the standout on the album, but it's very good, and together the vibe and the performance make it very emotive. The lyrics are delivered particularly well on that track, and I'm trying to avoid with these videos that I'm making too much overlap between each of the sections, but you do find that a lot of these tracks stand out in more than one area. So for this one, I'm just going to highlight that this is one of my tracks that scored a 10 out of 10 on lyrics. And then a standout in the other direction, Won't You Come Out Tonight. This one was actually the lowest score emotionally for me. I gave it a 6 out of 10 on vibe and an 8 out of 10 on emotion, which you can probably figure out gives us a 7. I just think compared to the rest of the album, the vibe was off. It didn't really gel with the others. And if it was a more straightforward singer-songwriter pop album, it would fit in well, but it's not that. Sure, it's more complex than some of those would be, but compared to other tracks on this album, it didn't stand up. I did enjoy this song more the more I listened to it, though. First couple of times I was not really into it, but it's a good catchy song that you enjoy once you've heard it a few times. For Dylan, there's a couple of standouts. Like a Rolling Stone was particularly strong. It's expressive and emotive, and a really strong performance for Bob Dylan. He hasn't got the strongest voice, but it works well on this track, and he really makes you feel what he's trying to express on this one. I gave it a 9 out of 10 on emotion. On the other side of things, Don't Think Twice It's Alright only got a 6.5 out of 10. I thought the performance on this one was a bit weak for me, and the lyrics were a little creepy, which kind of didn't help the vibe. He says the line, "I once loved a woman, a child I am told," and that put me off quite a bit. Overall, on the emotion side for Jesse Wells, I think the vibe was excellent, and he nailed a lot of the performances, particularly for someone who doesn't have a typical singer's voice. I think my one real criticism for the performances is we could have seen some more confidence in the delivery. I gave Jesse Wells on the emotion, vibe and performance side of things an 8.3, which is obviously significantly higher than the 7.5 that Bob Dylan scored. Let's talk music and songwriting. Both of them had at least one track that scored 10 out of 10 on lyrics. Jesse Wells had 4 though. Lyrically, those tracks that really stood out for Jesse Wells were the more cynical, anti-establishment ones, the protest songs. He writes these particularly well. Those 4 for me are Masks Off, the title track and album opener, The Ballad of Big Balls, Domestic Error, don't want to get demonetized. I'm not monetized, what am I talking about? And Join Ice. Obviously don't join Ice. Listen to the song, make your mind up. The overalls stand out for me on the music and songwriting front, and my personal favourite track on the album, though I don't necessarily think it's the strongest track on the album, was Siddhartha. I didn't think it was as important as some of the other tracks on the album, but the arrangement was perfect. The lyrics were very strong, if perhaps slightly too poetic. I did really love the line, "Old friends don't change, they just get more the same." I felt poignant. The guitars are really gorgeously arranged, and the rhythm section coming in about a third before the end of the song, perfectly done. It's exactly what it needed at that point, and it sounds fantastic. That song did get the highest score on songwriting for me. It was an 8.7 out of 10. Jesse Wells delivered quite consistently across the album. Bob Dylan's work was a bit more of a mixed bag. His highest score was on Like a Rolling Stone, which I gave 8.3 on music and songwriting. But Lay Lady Lay and All Along the Watchtower both scored 8 out of 10 as well. He has some good songs. And some of his worst songs were the less well-known ones. Quinn the Eskimo and Rainy Day Women, number 12 and 35. But also one of his hits, The Times They Are A-Changin', only scored a 7.2. Dylan only scored one 10 out of 10 on lyrics, Blowing in the Wind. In my opinion, it has some of the best lyrics ever written. Overall, Wells really solidified the lead here, and I truly think he might be one of the greatest living lyricists. He got an 8.1 on music and songwriting, but an 8.9 specifically on lyrics. On the production side of things, you have to bear in mind that Bob Dylan recorded a lot of these songs literally decades ago, so I have factored that in when I gave the scores. I haven't marked him down because the panning is weird, because they literally had 3 options a lot of the time, left, middle and right. But a big problem for Bob Dylan in particular is the tone of the harmonica. It is harsh. It's aggressive and off-putting. My girlfriend really didn't like me listening to that one out of my speakers, and she's not in the same room. It's even a little painful at times. I'd say The Times They Are A-Changin' is the most prevalent example of this, so if you want to know what I'm talking about and don't want to have to listen to a bunch of it, just go listen to that one. You get what I'm saying. Jesse Wells does also overuse the harmonica, but not as much as Dylan. And the big comparison is, I guess the industry's learned how to mix a harmonica by now. It sounds a lot more mellow, it fits the vibe a lot more nicely, it's just mixed better. The harsher frequencies are toned down a bit, it still cuts through, but it's not painful. Even at times enjoyable. And I say that as someone who doesn't love harmonicas, but has 3 because what do you buy a musician? An instrument. Just don't do that. If you've got musician friends, don't buy them instruments. Give them cash. They want cash. All of your musician friends want cash. Everything Must Die was the best produced track on the album. It's not the strongest song, but best produced track. It scored an 8.9 out of 10 on production and technique. The harmonica worked really well on that one, and it bounced off of the organ quite nicely. The track starts with a nice acoustic vibe, but it's enhanced even further when the bass and drums come in. I also thought there was a bit of a Beatles-esque sound, which served the song well. This and Not Some Other Way scored the lowest. I gave it a 7.1 on technique and production, which is a shame because it scored so highly on emotion. I think this is the track that sounded the most like Bob Dylan. Overall, mix and master and clarity were very strong for Wells, but there were some elements of the production that didn't necessarily lift it or give it anything extra. So overall it scored 8.2 on production and technique, which is a shame because in this modern era you can score higher than that. So, you've probably figured out by now that I stand by what I said at the start. I think Jesse Wells is better than Bob Dylan. To reinforce that, I think he's stronger than him on all fronts. Remember, I listened to the Bob Dylan greatest hits, the essential Bob Dylan. I'm comparing it to one album by Jesse Wells. And Jesse Wells just delivered more. There was more range, there were better songs, better lyrics, better performances, better production across the board from Jesse Wells. I really think he's one of the best lyricists alive today. And you'd probably have to look to some incredible hip-hop artists to find someone better, which is definitely something that I'm going to be doing over the next few months because I'd love to find someone better. One thing I will say is I think we've heard everything we need to from Jesse Wells in this genre. I think for his next album, he should change up the style. I'd love to hear something punk from him, or maybe a collaborations album with a bunch of different hip-hop, R&B artists, or go in a much more bluesy direction, or go for some hard rock. There's only so many times you can stand in a field with an acoustic guitar and keep people's attention, and I think he deserves people's attention. My overall score for Masks Off by Jesse Wells is an 8.2. Before I rated it, I thought it was going to be higher. I will point out, getting rid of Won't You Come Out Tonight boosts it up to an 8.3, and tightening some of the weak spots in some of the other tracks might have brought it up a little bit as well. The whole album is available as a live performance in a very slightly different order on his YouTube channel, so I'll link that in the description. On to the recommendations. I did listen to twice the amount that I'm going to recommend, but I probably would have listened to a lot more if I hadn't settled on Jesse Wells' album to review basically straight away. First up, Masks Off. Of course. I really think you should check it out. I actually did a review on this one recently, but I keep coming back to it, so I'm going to recommend it. Looking for People to Unfollow by Eka Vandal. It's an excellent punk all the way through to hip-hop journey of an album. Love it. The Wilt to Live by Voila. It's an enjoyable rock album that feels quite cinematic at times. Why the Lights Flicker by Telescreens is in a similar boat. And I'm also going to chuck in a bit of an oldie, though that makes me feel old saying it. Watsky's Times Infinity is coming up to 10 years old, and I think it's brilliant. It's one of my favourite albums. It's alternative rap, kind of full band experience. If you don't love it, tell me why in the comments. And on that note, remember to like, comment and subscribe if you want more album reviews that really dive deep into the emotion, songwriting and production of what makes an album special. I will see you next time. Bye!